Suspect wanted in connection with a double homicide has been found dead. This case all started last Wednesday when two victims were found shot to death outside of their townhome along the 7900 block of Tam O'Shanter Boulevard in North Lauderdale. Those victims seen here identified as Jennifer Bellony and her daughter nicknamed Nana. Police say the daughter's father, Odaine Anglin, was the only suspect in the
Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. Just after 9 in the morning, on a quiet residential street in North Lauderdale, Florida, a phone call cuts off mid-sentence. A mother on one end, a daughter on the other. The conversation ends not because of static or a dead battery, but because something far more final interrupts it. In the minutes that follow, two lives end, a community is shaken, and a 5-day manhunt begins. It will not end in a courtroom, nor in an arrest, but in a bathroom stall at a gas station 5 miles away. What a mother saw that morning, and what her daughter never got the chance to see, is a story of warnings documented on paper, a family that tried to move forward, and a system that never caught up in time. What a final phone call on a quiet Florida morning led to a double tragedy and a manhunt that ended without justice. That's the case of Jennifer Bellony and her daughter. Jennifer Bellony was 32 years old. Friends and relatives called her devoted, hardworking, and driven. She had built a professional career in finance, worked as a tax preparer, and later as a real estate specialist. More importantly, she was a mother of 3 children. On this particular April morning, she was preparing to take her teenage daughter Anastasia to school. Anastasia was 15, a student with the ordinary routines of any teenager, her uniform on, her backpack ready. She was, by every account, a bright girl, full of life, with her entire future ahead of her. This is where the stakes rise immediately. A mother and a child, going about the most ordinary of rituals, getting ready for a school drop-off. But the danger wasn't ordinary. It was the danger of someone Jennifer once trusted most, someone she had tried to separate from, someone she had once sought legal protection against. In 2018, 4 years earlier, Jennifer had walked into a Florida courtroom and filed for a restraining order. In that petition, she told the court that her then-husband had threatened to kill her. For a time, that order stood between them. But restraining orders are paper shields, and paper shields don't always hold. What happens when a survivor does what's expected? Files, leaves, divorces, and still finds herself face-to-face with danger years later? That question is at the heart of what happened next. Family members later told reporters that Jennifer had been on the phone with her mother that morning. She was standing outside her townhouse in the Willow Woods community in North Lauderdale. While on the call, she noticed her ex-husband, Odaine Anglin, nearby. She said something about seeing him and then hung up. What happened next unfolded in seconds. According to witnesses, gunfire ripped through the quiet block. 4 shots in quick succession. Pow, pow, pow. The sounds echoed across the townhome complex. By the time neighbors rushed outside, Jennifer and her daughter were both lying on the ground near the family's car. Backpacks were scattered on the pavement, a school day frozen in time, never to be completed. Odaine Anglin, age 34, fled immediately. When the Broward Sheriff's Office arrived minutes later, both Jennifer and Anastasia were already gone. Pronounced dead at the scene, victims of an act that investigators would quickly say was no random shooting, no mistaken encounter, but an intentional act of violence carried out by someone who knew them well. The suspect was not a mystery. Within hours, the sheriff's office named Anglin publicly. His face appeared across local news broadcasts, his name printed in headlines. Wanted in connection with the murder of his ex-wife and teenage daughter. Deputies issued warnings that he was dangerous and urged the public to call with any information. For Jennifer's family, it was the nightmare they had feared but hoped would never materialize. Because this wasn't the first time she had faced danger from Anglin. Their history stretched back years. They had once been high school sweethearts, married young, and started a family. But over time, their paths diverged. Jennifer built a career, kept her focus on her children. Anglin, according to relatives, struggled to keep work and battled personal issues. Their relationship was marked by breakups and reconciliations before finally ending in divorce around 2020. The split was not peaceful. By 2018, she had already filed for that domestic violence restraining order, citing threats to her life. The order did not last indefinitely. Records show she missed a critical hearing later that year, and the protection expired. What remained was history. Neighbors who witnessed the aftermath of the shooting described scenes they could hardly process. Yellow tarps, children's belongings on the ground, a family car with doors flung open, the street filled with the sound of sirens and the sobs of family members. One woman told reporters she heard the shots, ran outside, and saw what she never wanted to see: the bodies on the pavement. By midday, law enforcement had mobilized a county-wide manhunt. Anglin, they warned, was armed and dangerous. They believed he might still be in the Broward County area, perhaps around Margate, a place he was known to frequent. For 5 days, his name circulated in press conferences. Broward Sheriff Gregory Toney described him as a menace to society. Officers went door to door, followed up on tips, widened their search. This was the second phase of the story, the chase. Because in true crime arcs, the moment after the crime is committed becomes the moment the community holds its breath. Would law enforcement catch him? And if so, what would happen next? But in this case, the climax never came in a courtroom. On April 18th, 5 days after the murders, deputies tracked Anglin to a Circle K gas station in Fort Lauderdale. They surrounded the area, confirmed his presence, and prepared to move in. He had gone into the restroom. Deputies tried to make contact, urged him to surrender. But before they could open the door, they heard a single gunshot from inside. When they forced entry, they found him dead from a self-inflicted wound. No trial, no questions answered under oath, no testimony, no cross-examination, no defense, no verdict. In the sheriff's words, Anglin was a coward. In the family's words, he was someone who had taken away a daughter, a niece, a mother, and a sister. This is where the resolution should come. But in reality, there was none. Because when a suspect dies before capture, the file closes quickly. The state no longer has a case to prosecute, and yet the family is left with questions. Questions that don't get a day in court. What was in his mind that morning? Why show up after years apart? Why target his own child? Did the system fail Jennifer by not sustaining the order of protection years earlier, or by not following up more aggressively on the warnings she filed? Those questions are left hanging, not because investigators don't care, but because the person who held the answers took them to his grave. In the days after, the community mourned. Candles and flowers were placed outside the townhouse where the shooting took place. Friends described Jennifer as selfless, a woman who always put her children first. They described Anastasia as bright, spirited, and loved by her peers. At school, classmates grieved a friend they had expected to see that day. A girl in a school uniform who never made it past her driveway. The case itself now exists only in records and in the grief of the family. For law enforcement, it is closed. The suspect identified, the manhunt ended, the individual deceased. For the family, closure is not the same thing. They live with the gap, the absence, the unanswered questions. And so we circle back to where we began, with a phone call that ended mid-sentence. A mother who saw danger and hung up. A daughter by her side, ready for school. A neighborhood that woke to the sound of 4 shots. The lesson here is not that restraining orders don't matter. They do. They create a paper trail, they create an official record, they give survivors a tool. But they are not, by themselves, a shield. They can't predict who will escalate, and they can't guarantee enforcement in every moment. For Jennifer, the petition she filed in 2018 shows she tried. She did what we asked survivors to do. She asked for help. But 4 years later, the threat still found her. This is why stories like this matter. They remind us that domestic violence is not only about relationships, it's about power, control, and escalation, and that leaving an abusive partner is often the most dangerous window of all. Jennifer's life tells us that survival is not just about courage, it's also about the systems around you, whether they step in fast enough, whether the protections hold. For Anastasia, the lesson is even harder. A child who never got to grow up, who never got to finish her school day, who never got to outlive her parents' conflict. Her life was taken not because she made choices about relationships, but because she was simply there, at the wrong moment, in the wrong place, in the sights of someone who decided to end both lives in one act. The community in Broward County won't forget this. They won't forget the morning a mother and daughter died on Tam O'Shanter Boulevard. They won't forget the 5-day manhunt that ended in silence. And they won't forget that justice was never tested in a courtroom. So what do we take away? Maybe this. When we talk about protective orders, we should also talk about enforcement. When we talk about survivors, we should also talk about the separation window, the period after leaving when danger is highest. When we talk about justice, we should remember that sometimes the legal process never gets the chance to play out because the suspect decides to end it on his own terms. Jennifer Bellony's name, Anastasia's name, deserve to be remembered not just as victims, but as lives lived, cut short but not erased. And for us, the viewers, the listeners, the community, our role is to ask hard questions. Are we doing enough to protect survivors? Are we listening when people say they've been threatened? Are we treating restraining orders as the beginning of intervention, not the end? Because on a Wednesday morning in North Lauderdale, it wasn't just a family that lost everything. It was a neighborhood, a county, and anyone who believes paper alone can stop violence. If you're watching this, I want you to think about what restraining orders mean in practice. Do they protect? Do they deter? Or are they just one step in a much larger process that too often ends like this, with tragedy before justice? Let me know what you think in the comments. Do restraining orders provide enough protection for survivors, or do we need stronger enforcement mechanisms to prevent cases like this from happening again? And if you or someone you know is facing domestic violence, please don't wait. Reach out. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. The number is in the description. Because stories like Jennifer's should never have to repeat.